This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm EJ Iannelli, and I'm joined here in the Roquehart Media Studio today by the bookbinder and book artist, Mel Antuna Hewitt, also known as Mel the Maker. So welcome, Mel.
Thank you for having me.
So we got to chatting at the recent Creative Mornings event. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of catching up, and I said that I would love to kind of bring you in and kind of catch up on what's been going on and what you've been working on, and then what the future might hold for you. So here you are, and let's do some of that recapping, which is I noticed that you recently did a work, was it for the Bookbinding Society of America, or American Association of American Bookbinders?
Oh, I remember you always do your homework. I did my homework too. I listened to all of your podcasts before I came on. So
thank you.
I know what's coming up. It is a group show through the Hand Bookbinders of California. So there's just these communities, these groups of bookbinders all over the nation, right? The big one is the Guild of Book Workers, and then just in little spots here and there, you have there's the Puget Sound book artists or whatever. So there'll just be little communities all over, and they don't really care if you actually live in the area. If you want to join, they're like, heck yeah, come join us. And so I joined the HBC, and they have a show every year just for the members. It's not juried or anything. You can just say, yeah, show my book. And they always hold it at the American Bookbinders Museum.
I see. Okay, there we go.
So it's just our group show, and I do have 2 books there right now on display. So if you happen to go to San Francisco, go to the museum, you'll be able to see a whole bunch of really cool books there.
And I would assume that's kind of necessary to have that flexibility in organization, simply because bookbinders aren't by any means a huge group. So You've kind of got to get members and bookbinders where you can.
Absolutely.
So tell me about those works. One was the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Oh, I wouldn't know either.
And he was the astronomer poet of Persia.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that kind of fascinating, because this is a book of semi-apocryphal poetry, may or may not have been attributed to him, but it was a big, kind of a massive success in the 19th century.
Yeah, it was. Gosh, just during that whole philosophical uprising and stuff that was going on, and it was written, I don't even know how long ago, but just during that time, for some reason, it just opened up people's minds and stuff like that. And the book itself is most famous for this binding that was done probably around that same time. And it was just this absolutely gorgeous binding, and it went down with the Titanic, I think, is what ended up happening.
Oh, okay.
But it had all the gold and stuff like that, and so it's just associated, the book itself is just associated with opulence. Anybody who really binds it makes it really fancy and stuff like that. The one that I had, the specific printing, it was more gentle. It was really simple, and that really speaks to me. I love simplicity in art.
So you went the opposite.
I went the opposite.
Whereas it was initially associated with opulence, you kind of went for a more minimalist design.
I went more minimalist. The only little bit of opulence in there is that I used mother of pearl veneer set into the inside of the covers. That's the only opulence.
And it's these little rectangles that kind of take on spiral shapes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was the only opulent thing I did. Everything else is just nice and simple. I just give the hint of things and stuff like that. Because a lot of times I feel I tried reading the Rubaiyat, and I'm gonna be honest, it kind of went over my head a lot. And so, but I'm sure that there were little things in there that I picked up on, is to what spoke to me and things like that. And so I guess that's kind of what I was going for, is just the little things that I picked up on. So the little hints of stuff. And that's why I went for a more minimalist design in the cover, things like that.
And why did you choose that book in particular?
To show for the exhibition, probably because it was one of the 2 most recent books that I have done. for exhibitions like that, I try to always put my most recent best work forward, because every book that I make is going to be better than the last one. And so the two
One
books,
hopes, yeah.
one hopes. And so the two books that I have there were my most recent that I had completed.
Cool. And with these books that you are creating, now there's two facets of your work, and that's one of the things that I always find intriguing. There are the artist books, wherein you take a book and then kind of transmute that, and you use the book as a crafting material for to kind of transform it into other objects. And then you have the book binding, which creates I wouldn't say destructive, but it definitely transmogrifies. Like the book as we know it is no longer recognizable afterwards. And the other one kind of preserves and honors and celebrates the book. So you've got these two different facets like the preservationist aspect or the celebratory aspect, and then the one that transmutes.
Yeah. I like doing both of them for those very reasons. Because I do think that, especially in the West, when it comes to what we think of the book, we're very, very rigid on what that is, right? It's pages in the middle and a cover around the outside. But if you really think about what the definition of a book is, and usually us bookbinders, book artists, whenever we talk about it, it's usually, does it conceal and does it reveal?
I see.
That to us is the definition of a book. So if it's something that conceals something on the inside, but that you can still open and reveal, then it's a book. And so a lot of book artists, so the people who don't do, the traditional of what people think of, we really grab onto that, finding ways to conceal and reveal. And there's usually some sort of a sequential thing going on the inside, in order to really get into the content of what is in the book. And so we really grab onto that.
And I don't know if you mentioned this, but what was the second book that you featured in this exhibition?
Yeah, so that was a binding I did of Mayflies of the Driftless Region. You will not know what that book is.
No. So I did a bit of digging on that. Okay. Yeah, because that was on your artist portfolio page. And I was really intrigued by this because I'm trying to think, because I took a note of it in my own notes, which is Gaylord Shanalek is the author of that, but it also appears to have been an art book from the very beginning.
Yeah, so he loves to fish. And so he was always collecting mayflies for his fishing and things like that. And at one point, he just started collecting them to just see all the different varieties. And he had what's the word for bug?
Etymologist.
Thank you, etymologist. Okay, sorry.
Oh no. Actually, there's a distinction. There would be entomologist. Entomologist, whereas an etymologist focuses on word origin. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, yeah. So he had a friend who studies insects, and he took them to his friend in order to figure out what varieties and stuff they were. And while he was doing this, what he's really known for, Gary, is his beautiful woodcuts that he does. And so he had picked out, I think there's 13 in there, and he had done these multi-block, so multicolor wood block illustrations for them. And so whenever you see a Gary Shanalek, you're usually going for it because of the beautiful illustrations that he does. And that's what really drew me to it myself, because I do some printmaking myself, and the illustrations in there, whether you like bugs or not, they're just gorgeous. And so that's what drew me to that one.
Yeah, and what struck me about that work is that the book itself was already quite ornate and artistic in nature, and so here you were enhancing it with another binding. So talk me through how you approached that, and what was your thought process as you take an artistic approach to this already artistic book?
Right. Oh gosh. So for me, whenever I start to think about working on a book, there are a lot of people who will just start building on things, like just taking various little aspects. I don't really work that way. Usually I already see it right away in my head, what it's going to look like.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It just pops just like that. And then I start taking the pieces in order to make it happen. And so when I was looking through the book to get some inspiration, I just saw it automatically. And, oh gosh, where am I going with that? And then I just start figuring out how I'm going to make it look like that. And I knew that I wanted to use mica in it because I wanted to portray that translucency that you get in,
like the gossamer of the wings. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to capture that. But I also wanted there to be some sort of texture in those as well, because a lot of those mayflies, like, they're really cool. Like, they're colorful and stuff like that. And so I didn't want just, the shadowy gray mica that you generally see. So I found some that had the inclusions in it. So like it has like reds and blacks and stuff in there. And then the form that's on the covers is actually meant to look like the tails of the mayflies, because that when I think of mayflies, I automatically think of their really long, kind of gross tails. But like the way that Carrie, illustrates them, it's so beautiful and so kind of rhythmic and magical how he gets them to just look like these beautiful wisps just floating there on the page. And so I kind of wanted to imitate that in a way, but more in my style.
So you arrive at these books, and how did you even come across that to begin with? So how did you even find out about it to know that that's a book that you wanted to create this binding for?
Yeah, so I get a lot of my book and sheets. That's what they're called. So unbound books are called book and sheets. Mm-hmm. I usually get a lot of mine from the American Academy of Bookbinding, which is where I'm studying right now for my diploma in fine binding. So whenever I go to there for a class, I always see what they have that's new up in their, drawer full of book and sheets. And I'll just flip through them. Sorry. I'll flip through them, and I just came across it, and I was like, yes, I want it. That's usually how.
And so these are always designed with the express purpose of exhibiting them, or do you hope that they enter a collection?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So and I haven't felt brave enough yet, but there are things, specific exhibits where you have to show like a book that they are telling you to bind. So like those are called set exhibitions. So they'll have a huge, amount of these book and sheets, and then you sign up, and then you have to bind that specific book that they have prerequisited.
That's kind of cool, because then you get to see multiple takes.
It's really cool to see everybody's different interpretations of it. I've never felt brave enough to do it because that is juried. Whether if you buy the book and sheets and then you bind it, there's still the possibility that you're not going to get into the show. And so I've always been really scared to do that. But usually for my bindings, it's either because, one, I think this just needs to be a book. It needs to exist. Two, because I hope that somebody else wants it because they also realize that it needs to exist. And then, if I feel it's worthy, then I will submit it for exhibition.
Yeah, and I probably should have specified, because the medium in which you work, it's both has this literary component, mm-hmm. and it has this artistic component, or visual artistic component, I should say. So it could be in the bibliophile's library, mm-hmm.
or
it could also be in the art collector's library.
Yes.
So it has two potential destinations.
Absolutely. And that's what I really, really love about bookbinding. And I do have to make just a little tiny caveat here. When I say bookbinding, I'm not talking about fixing books. a lot of people, when they hear bookbinding, they think, oh, you can fix my grandmother's Bible. I'm sorry, I can't. Not all bookbinders do that. It's like, when somebody says I work in IT, oh, so you can fix my computer. It's kind of like that. So what I really love about bookbinding is that it does span this line between art and between literature, and it kind of brings them both together, and I really, really like that, because usually when we think about books, we're only thinking about the words in there, right? That's what we associate as a book, right? As a collection of words on paper with a cover, but I feel that the object itself, the book itself, is can be just as much a piece of art as the words in it. And I also feel that it helps celebrate all that work that the author put in as well. Why not celebrate that and give it this beautiful covering that's gonna, last a lifetimes even, if you do a really good job.
And, at the outset, I had made the assumption that it was going to be, the bookbinding community was going to be relatively small. And I think that's a fairly safe assumption, but the artistic bookbinding community is an even smaller, perhaps, subset of that. Yeah. Out of curiosity, how many artistic bookbinders would you say are at work across the state, the region, the country, anything?
That is an excellent question. I don't know that I really could put a number to it. I think there are a lot of people who are making things that would be considered an artist book, but they just don't know it. They don't know that they're a book artist. And so I think that number is a lot lower than what we could actually say, at least in the region of Spokane County. I'm probably the only one making, the crazy things where people are like, that's not a book. And I know out in the Seattle area, up and down, through Portland, the whole coast there, I know that there's probably maybe 10 who do artist books, and probably double that for people who do fine binding, design bindings, things like that. So if you when you think about like the East Coast, though, it's probably triple, quadruple that. There's a lot more over there. Definitely a lot more over there. So I don't know. There's definitely could be more. I wish there could be more, trying to get more people interested in it. But yeah, there's not a lot of us.
Yeah, and before I move on to the artist books, which is this other component, there's one other design binding that I just wanted to talk about, and that so far the two works that we've mentioned are semi-obscure. I don't think you're going to find them on a lot of shelves. Yeah. But you've also done work by local authors. So Sharma Shield's The Cassandra is another work that you did. Yes. Now, was this in partnership with Sharma? Was she aware that you were doing this, or did you do it by surprise and then say, here's what I've done for your book?
Sort of both. Sort of both. So I was going to surprise her with it, but I had the hardest time finding a hardcover copy of her book.
All right.
Because that's usually what I like to work with, is the hardcover copies. Because if I'm lucky, the pages will already be in what's called signatures. They'll be pages that are folded together in sets. And hardcovers will have that, paperbacks won't. And so I was hoping that I would get lucky. I wasn't, but that's okay. I can work with it still. And so because I couldn't find one, I asked her, Sharma, do you have a hardcover laying around somewhere? She's like, yeah, here you go. And she's like, are you going to do something with it? I'm like, yes. So I was hoping to make it a surprise, but she caught on to me. And then I started posting my progress of it online or on my social and stuff like that. And she was like, I knew it. Oh yes, I'm so excited. And then when I finally got to show it to her in person, that's the one thing is if I'm making an author's, doing a design binding for an author, I want them to see it first before I post it on social, just because, I feel they deserve that. And just her reaction to it just meant everything to me. And just being able to see how she responded to my interpretation of, her themes and things like that within the book. It was one of my favorite moments.
That's cool. Yeah, and so we've got these decorative bindings, and then we've got the artist books. And I think you and I have already talked about at least one of these. One of them was Unintelligible Life. And so in a previous encounter, we talked about, and this was these accordion style pages that fold out, and then the text is rendered in Morse code and on this swirly rainbow backdrop. And so it's this really cool. I mean, it's really kind of exploring the possibility of what a book can be, because it's like a collection of books that comes in its own almost self-contained slipcover. But then when you unfold it, you can then keep unfolding it and keep unfolding it.
Yeah.
I could run at the mouth quite a while on the description. But the use of Morse code and the message that's contained within the Morse code, I was wondering if you could talk about that, and then maybe spin off from there as to how this explores the possibility of what books can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh gosh, where do I want to start? So when I started that book, I knew that I wanted it to be about how just weird and unfathomable life can be, especially in the respects where people say that life can be beautiful, and then on the opposite side, people are saying life is just terrible. You're either one or the other, and things like that,
or both at different times,
or both at different times. And then which one do you want to aspire to believe? That life can be good, life is good, or that life is just going to be dump the entire time, and so I kind of wanted to focus on that. And I used Morse code because, one, I wanted to play around with the idea of what a form of communication that wasn't meant to be visual would look like. And also to kind of not give you the text right away. Like, you kind of have to research it a little bit.
And you have to work for it.
You have to work for it. Yes, exactly. You have to work for it. And I just felt that kind of, it went along with this whole idea of, that you just, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about life? Which camp are you going to be in? How hard are you going to work for whichever side you decide to be on? And then the structure came about, especially this act that you actually have to unroll the book in order to open it. It gives you this feeling of just this always this head over heels that we are constantly in. I feel, at least, this constant head over heels that we're in life, right? Where once you're up, but then you got your head on the ground and your feet are up in the air, and it's just always this tumbling that we're doing. And so that's where the structure for that book came in. And I love playing around with the different ways that you can do the revealing. So the opening of the book, I really love playing around with that. And that one was just a really fun one to do.
And so the Morse code, it's not certainly, it was never used exclusively for distress, but because of the SOS message, I always associate it with the language of distress. And I don't know if that was part of your intent going in, or if it was just something like, let's go with an old school form of communication that people are going to recognize what it is almost as soon as they open up, but not a lot of people are going to be able, except maybe some Boy Scouts, are going to be able to decipher the message right away.
No, it definitely it was more because people would be able to recognize what it was. I don't think I was really talking towards using something that was a mode of distress or anything like that, but I love that you came up with that. I always like hearing people's different, interpretations of my work and stuff like that, because a lot of times when I go into things, like, because it pops into my head exactly how it's going to be, I don't always know the whys in it myself all the time. And so I always like to hear the whys that other people come up with of why I chose what I did. But I know that the the Morse code was mostly because I knew that a lot of people would recognize what it was without immediately being able to read it.
And there are parallels, of course, with another work, and I don't know how recent this is, but this was Echo Chamber, where it was Braille instead of, and so you can see the little pimples of Braille all over, and they almost repeat in a pattern. And this is something that, whereas you have this accordion style reveal of unintelligible life, Echo Chamber unfolds almost like a very delicate package. And this, to me, really plays with the form of a book, because then there were almost these coiled shreds of something that I could make out. So yeah, can you talk about some of the materials that you used and Braille as well, like why you chose Braille for that?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Echo Chamber. So that one was actually a really hard one for me to make. I'm gonna try really hard not to get emotional. It has a lot to do with some work that I've been doing internally myself. And I actually made this book during a class. That was our project. Was we had to come up with a concept, we had to make the content, and then we had to turn it into an object. And the work that we had to do it was completely opposite from how I work. I didn't have what the book was going to look like in my head.
Oh, okay.
So I had to work completely opposite, and I had to just put things together and hope that they worked. So we weren't allowed to use color or words or pictures. Those were the three things. So we had to use white paper, anything white material. We could add texture, but that was it.
Now it makes sense why it takes on those certain qualities.
Yeah. And I brought my Braille Maker with, because I knew that I wanted to play with it no matter what the class was going to be. And I ended up using it as a way to show all of the little toxic things that keep poking in my head at me.
Okay.
So those are, I'm not really using them as letter forms as I am an expression of the little, bad thoughts that we have about ourselves, or that either, come from somebody else or media or whatever, what have you, just the things that keep echoing around in our head that aren't necessarily good for us. And so a lot of the things that are represented in that book express a lot of what was going on in my head as I'm trying to empty my echo chamber of the toxic and put in the authentic me. And so you see in the book the various stages that those toxic thoughts are starting to be broken down. So that's what a lot of those shreds are. You'll see that on one page, it still looks pretty still together, and then as you work around the outside, you see it starts to come in different, different levels of disintegration and stuff like that. And then as you're moving towards the center of the book, the little triangles, that are sticking up like that, those are the fears that I have of what it's going to be like when that echo chamber is empty of all the stuff that's been there for the past 40 years, things like that. Am I going to be okay with the silence that's in there? Who am I if that's not in there, and things like that. And so those fears are covering up the center. And then when you open up the center, there's nothing in there but this little tiny bud that looks like a flower.
I was just going to say, can you talk about that flower that's at the center of the base?
Yeah. So so when you get to the center of the book, there's nothing in there except for this little tiny bud of a flower right in the center. And that is the little germination of hope for the authentic me that's going to end up completely blooming and filling up the inside of that echo chamber. So it's and it's also kind of in the shape of a vessel. So, there's room in there for it to be filled, with the good things. And so you can see in the book that there's just like stuff everywhere, right? But then right in that small little center, there's just nothing. It's just calm and peaceful and just me.
And when we get into the definition of a book, now, I think this meets the two criteria of conceal and reveal, but this is definitely going to challenge someone's assumptions of either a left-bound or a right-bound book of pages. And so do you get any pushback? Do you get people saying, well, this is more like a vessel than a book? Or do people not really take issue with the definition because the definition of a book, once you kind of explain it and frame it in terms of conceal and reveal, then yeah, it certainly meets those criteria.
I don't get a whole lot of opportunity to talk to a lot of people about my work. And so I can't really say that I get a lot of pushback for it. But I know that there are a lot of people in my field who do get pushback for things like that, exactly for the reason because we only have this one way of looking at what a book is. You know, we only think of it as pages with words with a cover, you know, and so when you give somebody something that by all intents and purposes is a book but doesn't look like it, then you know you're going to get some pushback. But in the few instances where I have been able to talk to people about it, when I explain to them what a book actually is and how it functions, then they're like, oh, okay, I understand that. They may not accept it, but at least they understand it, you know? So when I can say, well, if you think about, when you think about how a book works, it opens, you can maybe turn some stuff in it, and then you can close it again. That's what echo chamber does, you know? You can open it, you go through it, and then you can close it up again. So, you know, when I can explain to people like that, you know, they'll understand. Whether or not they accept it is another thing. But
well, we look to art to be challenged. So, yeah. And, you know, I think it meets the two ideas of both the beautiful and the challenging. And so when you pair those, they always make, I think, I would hope for a good combo, because it makes you, I think, maybe more, if you were to challenge the idea of what a book is and say it has to adhere to, you know, this more conventional format, when something is so engaging and something is so aesthetically appealing, I think we're more inclined to challenge our own assumptions. But, you know, that echo chamber certainly isn't the only work of yours that is concerned with healing, because you have another artist book called Be Healed. And this is one of those things that that takes a book, something that we would recognize as a conventional book, and then drills a hole through it and puts a medicine bottle. So talk about the genesis of that.
So that one was me coming to terms with the possibility that I would have to be on antidepressants the rest of my life. It was something that I was really, really struggling with, because that's not something that, you know, when you're growing up, you're like, I want to be depressed my entire life, you know, clinically depressed and stuff like that. And so it really was a way for me to heal myself in coming to terms with, this is just my biology. This is who, you know, I am physically. And I really loved the way that the book itself isn't whole until you put the medicine, you know, the medicine container in it. I love that. And I also think it's interesting that you have to take it out in order to access the inside of the book as well.
Right. Otherwise it won't open.
It won't open. Right. And like, I'm not entirely sure what that means to me, but I still think it's really interesting. Like I still think about my stuff a lot after I make it. But yeah. And then there's also, the fact that you can open the pill bottle and then there's more inside as well. You know, it's this piece of white fabric that says "Be Healed" on it, and it's supposed to harken back to, for anybody who is religious or grew up, you know, in Bible study and things like that. It's referencing the woman with an issue of blood who touches the hem of Christ's robes, and all of a sudden she's healed. Like it was she just needed her faith and she was able to be healed, you know. And at the time, I was faithful and things like that, you know, I believed in God and stuff like that. But no matter how much faith I had, here I still was with this debilitating, mental illness, and I wasn't healed. It was a little white pill that had to do it. And so it's a lot coming to terms with, gosh, I don't even know how to explain it, but just coming to terms with, what healing actually is, if it is just faith, or if it's, the faith and the hope that the pharmaceutical will be enough and things like that, putting your faith in the science that, human beings have worked, hundreds of years to figure out so that we can be whole.
And this might be another unintended consequence. And so it's the interpretation of the beholder.
Yeah.
But, the message be healed is something that I associate with televangelists. And it's usually a command, and there's an element of charlatanism to it.
Yeah.
And so the be healed, it had an air of almost falseness, like deliberate hollowness to it. So I didn't immediately go to the Bible, which is a slightly more authentic version. Or, we're led to assume that this actually took place. But the world of the televangelist, who's commanding people, usually exactly, pretty violently, in exchange for what they hope is money. And then,
That's so interesting. I love that. One of these days, you might actually have to come and hold the book yourself, because on the prescription label and stuff like that, there's actually a lot of Bible scripture references and stuff like that there too. But I love that whole interpretation. Well, and especially because the letters are red and it's a very bold font. So it is very in your face. And I like that. Thanks, EJ. I like that.
And all of this is rooted in the print world. And when we think back to Gutenberg and we think to the evolution of the printing, or the invention of the printing press, and one of the wonders that it bestowed upon the world was the reproducibility of print. And if you talk to folks like Reynaldo Gil de Zambrano and other printmakers who are working, this is what they refer to. They say print it's infinitely reproducible, with enough resources. And what you are doing, though, is you're really almost taking what is infinitely reproducible and making it very singular. And this was something that, when we were kind of going back and forth, trying to arrange this, and you said, hey, what are some things that we might be talking about? This is one of the things that I really wanted to touch on, is the reproducibility of print, and then your approach to that, which is making these very singular objects out of print. And so it's in a way reining in the very unique characteristic of the printed object. And when we talk about various things that your work the challenges that it posed to the beholder or the onlooker, this is one of those things that it kind of takes away the specialness of print in making a special object out of it. So I don't know if you feel as though there's this conflict in your work where your books are not really infinitely reproducible. They're unicums.
Right. I don't know that I ever went into it with the mindset that, I'm going to, because we think of print, whenever I talk to Ronaldo about it, print is he calls it a democratic art, because it means that many more people can buy really beautifully made pieces of art, I don't think I ever went into it thinking, well, I'm going to take that back a step again. I don't think that was ever my intention. I think my intention really is just going back to to take, how do I say this? So books have become one of the most mass-produced forms of art that we consume here in the U.S. We have we can thank Gutenberg and China for making movable type and stuff like that, and pioneering all of that in order for more people to be able to afford to buy books to read. great. I love that. I think that's so great. But then in going through all of that, we've kind of forgotten how beautiful and artistic books can be. You know, we've really focused so much on the printed matter inside that we've forgotten the actual book as an object. And so I think for me, it really is just taking it, you know, those couple of 100 years back where they were revered for how beautiful they were, and not just the words inside, but the fact that, you know, the beautiful words inside is what, you know, influenced how the book looked and things like that. And so I think I kind of just wanted to give the printed matter its due diligence is really what it is. It's just give it its due diligence, you know. Like Sharma's book. Oh my gosh. You've read the Cassandra, right?
Yeah.
You know, just the beautiful imagery and stuff that's in there. I'm like, girl, you deserve more than just, you know, this flappy little thing on there. And like, you know, the heron for me was just this beautiful big image in there. And so that's why it ended up in the design and stuff like that. And I just think, you know, the words just need their due diligence in a book that looks just as beautiful as what they crafted on the inside.
And it seems to me that it's harking back to the tradition and maintaining the tradition that we associate with like the Christian monks, where there were these gorgeous illustrations, just a really gorgeous calligraphy that was designed to give the words that they saw as you know, that they were towards which they were very reverential, to give them their due. And it's there's a Muslim tradition as well of really the book as an object that celebrates its contents and that is also just incredibly gorgeous to look at. I think there's an Orhan Pamuk, My Name is Red, and that's a book about this tradition of you know, this Muslim tradition of book art.
Right. Well, and even with that, like for Muslim areas, the words and the writing of the words is sacred as well. Like, you know, the words are art, and so giving that art that they really believe is, you know, like from God and stuff like that. I mean, why would you put a floppy paper back cover on that? You know, if you believe so inherently that the words themselves are beautiful, the act of writing the words out is beautiful, why wouldn't you give it a house that is beautiful? So that's really what it is for me, is just giving those words, the printed matter, its due diligence and what it deserves.
Yeah, and so I've been highlighting several conflicts or tensions. And I think the point that you raise is another one, where you talk about mass market paperbacks and, you know, how difficult it was for you just to find a hardcover of Sharma's book. So clearly there's this very commercial approach to it, and this is the reason why they're issued in paperback. So, okay, this is great. It's very democratic. It's relatively affordable. And so everyone can partake of this particular art without a significant outlay. But it means that the work that you are doing is almost the opposite. It's directly in opposition to the commercial. And so this raises a problem because it seems like it's crazy. We always end up talking about the economics of art, because here we talk about we've had so many visual artists, musicians, writers, whatever, sitting on that side and saying, yeah, this is wonderful, but you know, if you're looking to you know, have a way of life out of this, it becomes increasingly difficult. And so I don't know if you wanted to talk about the economics of bookbinding, of doing artist books, and just the milieu in which we find ourselves. Are people appreciative enough of this to say, I will pay money so that this can enter my collection and you can keep doing what you're doing?
Gosh, you know, as hard as it is for artists, I think it is I don't know. I don't know if I should say that, but I do often feel like it's even harder for book artists to do what we do, and I think it's largely because we are still, exposed to the traditional fine arts. Oil paintings, watercolors, ceramic sculpture, all of that beautifulness. Like we have museums and galleries and stuff that are dedicated to that. So we have that continuous exposure to where we remember that, what these artists are asking for, purchase price wise is, oh gosh, I'm really bad with words. Rightly so, but because, for the past 100 years or whenever we started, doing offset printing and all of that stuff and making books really cheap and things like that, that's the only exposure that we have to books, right? Is the $25, hardback that you can get at Barnes and Noble or things like that. That's the only exposure the general population has to books. And so when I come in and I'm trying to convince you that yes, you should pay $300, $500 for this one-of-a-kind book, you're going to say, why? I can go get it and read it for $25, and so I think it's more of a question of exposure that if more people understand what goes into what we do in the way that they understand what goes into, painting a beautiful landscape for 100 hours, then you'd also realize that the 100 hours that I spend on a book validates the price that I'm asking. And so, a lot of what I do is educating, the community on the legitimacy of what I'm asking for in compensation.
And that's hard.
It is really
That's
hard.
really hard when you have all these societal
hard.
forces working against you because it's saying books are cheap.
Yes.
When I go down to Auntie's, I'm looking at, what's secondhand, and because I want the access to the words inside. Yeah. And I'll sometimes opt for a paperback over a hardback. But I guess it also depends on the value system of the individual, because there are works that I hold in very high esteem that I will pay more for. I went out and when I was still in my 20s, saved up for a first edition of Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, yeah.
And when I saved up for a first edition of Robert Penn Warren's All the King's Men. Now, of course, first editions are different beasts.
Right.
But they're still...
It's along the same line.
Exactly. It's saying this object, given the infinite reproducibility of print, this object is still unique. This object is still special among all that.
Yeah.
So... are you fighting a value system that really exists in America, but really is worldwide, that is saying books need to be cheap? You only need the words inside and then sell it on to the book traders.
Right. I can't speak for the rest of the world. I can only, speak for what I see in my own nation, and especially because, how consumerism we are over here, that, you want to get the bang for your buck. And if it's a book that you're only going to read once, then you're just going to either, go get it secondhand, which there's nothing wrong with that. Totally not knocking secondhand or anything like that. Love my secondhand shops, but in a world of consumerism, we're always going to go for the best deal. And that's usually going to be just going and getting it cheap. Right. But, for those of us who have these relationships, especially with one specific book, like your Catcher in the Rye and things like that, if it's something that, just sits in your soul all the time, you're definitely going to hand out a lot more for that, right? Or even like, if you're a Swiftie or whatever, you're going to hand over a little bit more if you can be in that front row, right? So there is definitely a value system that goes along with it. I think we, as bookbinders and book artists, we do have a harder fight, for for things like that because of the fact that you can get books so incredibly cheap, and so we have to find those people who will save up, even as poor college students, to get, their first edition copy of Dune or things like that. And there's not very many of them, but when they're out there and you can see how much they appreciate it, like, it really makes it worth it. So yeah.
I'm interested in solutions, potential solutions.
Yeah.
And being one person or even a dozen people, and then fighting these mores and these societal expectations is really difficult. But I'm thinking about ways that you might be able to address this. Like, have you thought about maybe going in with partnering with an author or maybe you've already done this, working with an author to release a special one-off or two-off or three-off of their book, so that they can, their Swifty equivalents could get a commemorative copy or something like that.
I am working really hard towards that. It is something that I have been wanting to do, like, forever, especially since here in the Inland Northwest, we love our literature. Like, let's be honest, we're really good readers out here, and we have so many authors. I just haven't had the gall to go up to one of them and say, hey, let me do this, especially since, like, I'm not quite familiar with all of the copyright issues that go along with that.
Right.
There's some things that I would need to look into, but it is definitely something that I want to do. So for right now, I am working on a project with Mary Noel Smith, Poet Laureate. Mary. I am working with her right now on a bespoke project where she is going to be writing some poetry for a set of photographs that I've done that we are then going to bind into a book.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for this one because she's writes such beautiful things, and I couldn't find text to go with these photographs. And then I met her at the Hive and I'm like, do you want to do this? And she's like, yes. So we're going to do that. And then I'm really hoping, from there that I can find, more authors, more poets who want to get together and, make these like editions of 5 or 10, beautifully bound books with their beautifully bound words. I know that one thing that I would like to start doing is making design bindings for the Spokane is Reading authors that we bring in once a year.
That would be cool too, yeah.
So I did get a copy of the Reformatory, which is what we're reading this year, to bind. I'm doing that on my own, but I think it would be really cool, year after year to maybe do this as something special for the authors that we bring in. So, Spokane is Reading, find me, but yeah, like I would absolutely love to do that. Or like, Jess Walter's new book that came out, like, I think it'd be really cool to do one with him as well. Just, we're so chock full of authors here, and I would love to make special books.
Yeah, and I'll put in a special request. Like, Spokane is Reading seems like a natural home, because then you're not only getting local authors, they also have national authors with national recognition as well. And which isn't to say that our local authors like Jess Walter don't also have national recognition, but to see something that is the design binding, and then also something that is an artist book. So taking that in two different directions would be really, really cool. That would
be really cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. But yeah, so I would love to do things like that. I've been trying to do like a lot of just in the community work. So, I've taught classes at Spokane Print and Publishing Center and things like that. I've co-founded the Inland Northwest Book Art Society, which is not as formal as it sounds. It's like really low key. We invite anybody and anybody and everybody who has any level or any interest in making books to join us once a month. We teach each other things, and it's just, to get more, people more, engaged with it and exposed to books in all of its form. And so it's just a lot of education that I'm working on.
Yeah, and I'm hoping a lot of those different things the different dynamics and connections kind of come together, because it sounds like it's there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, there is a lot of opportunity. And also, little plug, I do have a solo show coming up in Terrain in October.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, and all of that is going to be book. Whether when you look at it at first, you're like, Mel, what are you talking about? I'm telling you, it's all going to be book. And the other thing is that it's going to be interactive. So like you actually have to engage with the pieces in order to really understand what it is that I'm getting at.
Cool. Well, you're already prepared for what's about to come.
Yes.
So you know that every ending is a false ending.
Let's do it.
And that we get the lightning round. Normally, I start off with an either or, but I've gone with a slightly different slate.
Okay.
Because I had a suspicion that you might have done your own homework. And so I didn't want you to come in.
Change it up.
Yeah,
All
gonna
right,
mix
let's
it up
do
a little bit. So is there a book that you would absolutely love to work with, either as an artist book or as to make a kind of design binding out of it? So is there like a rare first edition that you would love to get your hands on?
Yes. So it would actually have to be Lois Lowry's The Giver.
No kidding.
Yes.
Okay.
It is the book of my soul. I read it first in 6th grade, and it has stuck with me ever since. You know, even as a 40-year-old woman, like the book, it still just like grasps me. You know, if I could get my hand on a first edition of that and turn that into a beautiful design binding, and then even an artist book, you know, I would love that. Right now I have like a 5th printing or whatever of it that I'm going to work on. But, you know, if I could find a first edition, oh man, I'd grab it right up.
So yeah, any interested donors who have a first edition,
please.
Hit you up.
Hit me up.
So with bookbinding, this was something that you were exposed to. You, if I got your bio correct, you initially passed up an opportunity to learn bookbinding in college, and you came to it a bit later. Mm-hmm. So is there a skill or a craft, like if you could snap your fingers and learn one overnight, obviously that isn't bookbinding, because that you're already working on that. Is there a skill or craft that you would love to acquire instantly?
Oh, I think it would be really cool to do metal forging.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be really cool. Especially since like I've been dreaming a lot of how I can make metal books. So.
And you know that we have those resources here in town.
Yeah.
You could partner with Columbia Fire and Iron. I can't guarantee that they would be able to teach you overnight, but
yeah. But yeah, no, I think it would be really cool to do some metal forging. I think that'd be really awesome.
Oh yeah, a heavy metal book.
Heavy metal.
So you kind of took you've preempted this question or this next question by talking about Lois Lowry's The Giver, which you read in 6th grade. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you can go with your second best pick.
Okay.
Is there a book that was super influential when you were a child or a teenager, like one that you read and other than The Giver that was incredibly influential on you throughout life?
It's not a book, it's a play.
Oh, let's go with that.
So
which does exist in print form.
Yes,
so
it exists in print form, and I actually would like to start binding some plays as well. I was a theater nerd in high school, and I will say it was not musical theater that I was into. I like the really weird stuff. Love me some Harold Pinter. The Dumbwaiter, that was the one that really like grabbed. That's like number 2.
And do tell why this play in particular?
Because I resonated on some level with both main characters. I was one, but I wanted to be the other, and I really enjoyed watching their push and pull on each other and stuff like that. I just felt that internally, especially as a teenager. And probably even more so now as an adult. And, because it's part of the theater of the absurd, like you don't ever really know what's going on, and it's all very, it's all very cyclical and things like that. And, it's so much more open for interpretation, I think, than, realistic theater and things like that. And so I just really love that kind of stuff.
Well, I look forward to your artist book that makes use of, or it has some association with the dumbwaiter.
Ooh, I love the challenge. All right, I'll have to think about that.
And then finally, we're going to dredge up some interesting memories. Mm-hmm. Can you think of an embarrassing moment, an acutely embarrassing moment? I've got scores of them, so maybe this is why I gravitated that. Mm-hmm. An embarrassing moment that you wish you could forget, or flip side, one that in retrospect you're grateful for.
Ooh.
Maybe it makes a funny anecdote, and so you were glad to have gone through it.
Well, that's a tough one. I think I'm going to go with the one that I could forget.
Okay.
And it was from high school. It was freshman, very first day, brand new high school, never been into the building before.
And where was this?
Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Okay.
I'm a Colorado girl. So very first day, freshman year, my friend and I, the freshman wing is on one side of the building. But we had a class on the opposite side, right? And so because the building is symmetrical, we think it's going to be the exact same on the other side. So, on the freshman side, girl restroom is here, boy restroom is there. You can see what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I know where this is going.
But, the embarrassing part is that a gentleman happened to be in there at the moment we walked in, and my friend and I, we just screamed our heads off when we saw this poor guy doing his business, and we just ran right out. And because everybody heard the scream, they watched us as we ran out, and we're just hightailing down the hallway. So
it's the exact opposite of what you should have done, which is just kind of sneak quietly out, but instead you drew attention to yourself.
We did. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you say forget, but I think it makes for a great anecdote.
Yeah. But I'm hard on myself. Like I said, it's one of those echo chamber things I'm working on. So
another future art book. So.
There it is.
Mel, thank you so much for coming in. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, EJ. I had so much fun talking with you. It's been great.